Hey everybody, welcome to Getaway Day episode 13. I'm Gautam and I'm joined by Matthew. Mason is out this week. This week we're going to do a second part of our trade deadline preview, this time focusing on the American League. Before we get started, we're going to, of course, hit on the sticky substances issue that is the number one story around the league right now, and we have a lot to get to today, so let's get into it. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, great. Glad to have you, and thanks for jumping on here. So, with the sticky substances, today's Monday the 21st, which means it's the first day that the crackdown is in full effect. Pitchers are being checked a couple times a game for the starting pitchers. The closers get checked before they come in. So, today's game between the Mets and the Braves, Jacob deGrom was the first pitcher to ever get his hat, his belt, and his glove all checked after he came out of the first inning, and he was kind of laughing there, and he had another dominant performance. But I guess I'll start off by asking you, where do you fall on this issue at this time?
I'm all for banning the substances. It's a rule that existed. It's not like they came out with a new rule. They just decided to enforce it. And that's the thing. That's why I don't understand why pitchers are all upset about this.
Yeah, for sure. And for me, like, I agree with that, but at the same time, for the way it's being implemented mid-season, it just seems a little bit clunky, and that's just the way that MLB has seemingly introduced so many of their different rules, just kind of plopping them in there right in the middle of the season or without a lot of notice. And I think that's part of the pushback that's coming from pitchers, and of course the potential side effects that could occur, as we saw that Tyler Glasnow was kind of blaming this rule change or enforcement of the rules, blaming his injury on that. So
yeah, MLB definitely could have handled it differently, but it's MLB and how you've almost come to expect them to handle it this way.
yeah,
If you need something to be able to pitch and not get hurt, that just doesn't sound right to me, though. Like, you shouldn't have to cheat to stay healthy.
yeah, definitely not. And for me, I hate that kind of these pitchers are getting vilified for doing something that everyone's doing because it wasn't enforced for so many years, and this isn't like a new problem. Pitchers have had a problem with the ball for years with getting a grip on it because it just comes out and they rub it in that mud or whatever, and it's done in a very inconsistent manner, and they just kind of get it, and it's really difficult to grip, and that's why a lot of people have been using sunscreen and rosin or whatever it may be, and that's kind of devolved into obviously the spider tack and these really sticky substances that not just enhance the grip, but they really increase the spin in a very unfair way.
Yeah, the pitchers really went with it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission with the sticky substances, and it just skyrocketed out of control. And rosin, sunscreen, I personally don't get the sunscreen part, but something more basic like those substances, I understand the pitchers wanting to use, but the spider attack is a big no for me.
Yeah, for sure. And
Yeah, so,
I think this feels like an overcorrection at this point. I think maybe at some point they'll introduce some sort of legal substance that everyone can use. Or, for me, the best thing that they could do would be to design a ball that actually had some more of that tackiness, like they have in Korea and Japan. And no one seems to have an issue with the ball there, and it's working for them. And yeah.
Come on, MLB never touches the balls and makes adjustments there.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And yeah, that's the final thing I'll say, that this story is obviously the number one top of mind thing, but I hate that it is, with so many much better, much more interesting things to talk about. Shohei Ohtani, Vladimir Guerrero, Marcus Semien's bounce back. There's endless better things to talk about, yet we always find ourselves talking about these things that take away from the player. So the biggest stories in the last 3 years have been the ball changing all the time. In 2019 with the juice ball changing again this year, and and potentially changing some other times in the postseason. We've had the Astros cheating scandal, and now we've had the Spire Tech scandal.
Yep. I'm ready just to be able to only talk about the golden age of young stars that we are in.
Correct. Yes. So in that case, I think we should move along to this week in Shohei Ohtani. Shohei hit a homer on Tuesday. He hit a homer on Wednesday. He hit 2 homers on Friday. He hit a homer on Saturday, and he hit a homer on Sunday. You asked, what did he do on Thursday? Oh, he just pitched 6 innings with 5 strikeouts and gave up 1 run. This guy is, we're running out of ways to describe how well he's playing. It's ridiculous. 23 home runs now.
Yeah, and I can't wait to watch him in the home run derby. And I hope he wins the home run derby, pitches in the All-Star game, and hits in the All-Star game.
That would be amazing, yes. And Coors Field with the home run derby, it's going to be amazing how many he's going to hit.
It's going to be a blast. I want all the top 5 guys there. Can you imagine if you get Ohtani, Vladdy, and Tatis all participating?
Yeah, that'll be. I think Vlad actually said he's not going to be doing it today, but I'm sure they can get some big names in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it should be a blast.
Yes.
And it's too bad with what Ohtani's doing that Trout's not here to be there as well. I mean, those two batting next to each other, I mean, that'd be just crazy. I mean, Trout was only hitting like 330 with 11 home runs or whatever it was when he went down with an injury after 37 games.
Yeah, hopefully he can come back soon and we can see those guys back to back and doing their thing for the rest of the year.
This year has almost been where like the top 3 to 4 finishers in the MVP voting just need to all be given an MVP award. Because I don't know how you're going to pick just one.
Right. Okay. Let's get into the American League and just go team by team and talk about their needs and where they are. If you haven't listened to last week's episode, you can catch up on all our analysis on the National League side of it. And today we'll hit the American League. There's a lot of really interesting teams to talk about. So I'd like to start with the Houston Astros, who swept the White Sox over the weekend, and they now have the best record in the American League. This team is absolutely like clicking on all cylinders despite missing Bregman, and Kyle Tucker is on the COVID IL right now, but they have the best WRC plus in the league, 124. The second place team is the Dodgers at 113. So they're just out of this world and mashing, and then they've also got the pitching depth to really stack up with any other team behind Greinke, Framber Valdez, Jake Odorizzi, and who am I missing there? Got some other really good pitchers. So what do the Astros need at this point?
Do they need anything? I mean, they have the deepest lineup in baseball.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe throwing you can never have too much bullpen.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, depending on the Bregman situation, maybe you need to get a stopgap there, but nothing that will actually take away from him or anything. I mean, you got Michael Brantley out there who's only hitting 340 right now.
Right.
So
perennially underrated. No one ever talks about how good he is. Just year in, year out, just hitting for average, got some power, and he just keeps doing it.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, they have 100 plus 112 run differential. So I mean, it's just a matter of what do they need.
Right.
Like it's nothing really. I mean, you can always shore up your team a bit, but they're not going for a major play here.
Yeah, and I couldn't even think of their other starters. So they've also got Jose Urquidy, Luis Garcia, Lance McCullers. So they have 6 starters right now in their rotation, plus Christian Javier, who was pitching really well before they moved into the bullpen because they had too many starters. So we're going to talk about a whole bunch of teams that have a lack of starters. This team does not have that, and they're so good on offense. It's just going to be probably minor moves. They don't really need to make a big splashy move to help this team.
I mean, as much as I hate the Astros for what they did, if there's anyone I want to succeed on that team, it's Dusty Baker.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
this is the team to finally get him that World Series.
Dusty and Brantley.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's the only reason you want that's the only reason I want them to succeed.
Fair enough. Okay, so we'll stick in this division. Their prime rival, the Oakland A's. They're they've just fallen behind the Astros in the division, but it's very close, and this is another really good team. But they definitely have some more holes than the Astros. So where do you see them going to add?
I mean, shortstop's the place you got to start. Andrus is not hitting, not surprising.
Yeah.
And so you got to get an upgrade there. I mean, they could go low cost, somebody like Andrelton Simmons, Freddie Galvis. You can get a stopgap there, or you can make the splash and go out and get Trevor Story when he's healthy again.
Yeah, that would be shocking to see the A's make that kind of move, but I could definitely see him going with that kind of like cheap option and making it work for them. But yeah, Galvis has been really, I mean, not Galvis, sorry, what's his name? Andrus has been so bad.
Yeah.
He's been, I think, the third worst qualified hitter this year. He's like almost 40% worse than the league average.
Yeah, I mean, is he going to be even an upgrade at that point? Like, I mean, the thing is, if Oakland could somehow convince Colorado to take back Andrus for the rest of the year and just basically swap salaries, they wouldn't be taking on that much money. They'd have to probably give up a little bit more of a prospect there, but Oakland's always got such a deep farm system. And if they really wanted to, they can make an even bigger splash and go for a starting pitcher and as a package there. And that would be a huge upgrade for them to solidify that rotation.
Yeah, if they want to compete with the Astros in the division, personally, I think they would have to make kind of a big splash and not just go with their typical fringy minor upgrade kind of moves.
Yep, if they really think they can win the World Series this year and this is their all out, they got to go with Story, Marquez. They can pry those two away from Colorado. That would push them arguably to be the best team in the AL.
Yeah, but they're definitely good. Go ahead.
We talked about also is just the Nelson Cruz we'll talk about the Twins also, but
yeah, that would be a pretty cool fit, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about so we can actually just skip over to the Twins right now. So speaking of Cruz, I was thinking about him, and he obviously doesn't fit with an NL team at all because he can't play the field. And then most of the other teams that are contenders in the AL, they already have their DH covered. So the two teams I thought of as fits were the A's and what was the other team that I had? The Rays. Those are two that I could think of that would really fit for Cruz. I don't know if you thought of another team that might fit for him.
No, when I was going through and doing some of my research and everything, and I came across Cruz, and you look at his stats, and I mean, he's hitting 300, double-digit homers, 900 OPS, and he's 40.
He's a robot.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, well, who wouldn't want him? And then you actually start going through the teams in the AL, and it's more of a question of who needs him.
Yeah.
And it's just so limited from that aspect.
Yeah, because you can't stick him in the outfield at all. So teams like the Red Sox, because they've got Martinez. I think the Blue Jays lineup is pretty stacked. The Yankees have Stanton. The White Sox don't really seem like they would be a fit. There's not a whole lot of options. So that kind of drives his price down a little bit because it's not like a bunch of teams will be bidding for him. So yeah, I could see the A's or the Rays going after him if the Twins end up selling. But will the Twins sell? That's the question.
They need to. I mean,
how far back are they now? It's like
they're 12.5 back from the White Sox, and they are 12 back from the wild card. I mean, they're 11 games under 500. It's almost a question. Their team is underperforming. Is it worth it for them to sell, or will there be the demand for their players? I mean, we already talked about Cruz there, and like we talked about Anderson Simmons and how little he's hitting, and their pitchers are so underperforming. They'd have to make a big splash and trade one of their big time players to get something noteworthy.
Yeah, and I really don't feel like the Twins will want to trade like a Barrios or even a Buxton, which would bring them a huge haul. But he seems like their stud that they want to keep. He's signed through next year, but I feel like he's the guy that they want to be their franchise player and sign him to a long-term deal. There's no way they're going to trade him. And even Barrios, I feel like they would want long-term. And even at the worst, they can give it another shot in 2022 because they have some of their players coming back. Like, there's no real pressure on them to sell, I feel like.
And they went with so heavy on one-year contracts that they're basically free to start over and not committed to any of these players that are underperforming.
Yeah. But trading Cruz makes a ton of sense because one-year deal, and just why not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And you can sell low on – teams might be buying low on a player like J.A. Happ or anything who, if you follow him at all in the past, he seems to be traded and then he's the front-of-the-line starter the last half of the season.
He did that with the Yankees, right?
Yeah, and then I think he did it with the Pirates before.
Okay, yeah. So
I mean,
a little change of scenery for J. Happ, and you never know. Okay, so we'll go to a team that you can give us the main rundown here, the Indians. Where are they?
Man, I don't know how they are doing this well. They're just beating up on the Central is probably what it is. But I mean, you went into the season, and who said they'd be needing starting pitching? I mean, they were just flouting or showing off their starting pitching depth, and you trade arguably their top three starters 3 years in a row. Like, what team does that?
That's the big difference with this year, where they don't have that big front of line starter that they can trade, because they've typically traded that for help in season. They don't really trade for a lot of like far away prospects. They trade for winning that season. They're usually in win mode, but I don't know if they can't make that move this year because there's no one to trade of that caliber.
No, not since you got to stop aggressively ripping off your shirts because you might hurt yourself.
Yeah. The rotation's not looking great right now with just Savali from the opening day rotation. Beyond him, they have Eli Morgan, Giancarlos Mejia, Cal Quantrill.
Yeah, Mejia's pitched, I think I saw 9 innings above high A.
Yeah, that's a rough spot.
Yeah. I mean, none of these guys are all so back and forth. One day they threw 4 shutout innings, which the Indians are starting to do with a few of those guys, is pitch them shorter starts and have them throw every 4 days instead. I mean, if they could buy low on one of those Twins players like a Pineda or Happ and just have somebody to eat some innings, that's all they need.
Definitely,
yeah. Bieber
and Plesac
will be back.
Yeah, so the bullpen's pretty good, but if they keep having to be stretched a lot, it's going to get worse.
We'll say the bullpen's pretty good, but I don't know if you've watched the Brian Shaw fall off ever since that sticky stuff came out.
Oh.
He's let up about 6 earned runs in his last 3 games.
Oof.
So, I mean, after his crazy resurgence, you don't know.
And then the lineup, I mean, Ahmed Rosario seems like he's figuring something out. Maybe it's the playing shortstop. He feels comfortable there instead of playing the outfield, but he's been really good the last month or so.
Yeah, he's on a tear, and one thing Francona talked about was just playing him every day. Back when he was in center, he was platooning since he was still getting used to the spot, not playing into righties as much. So he's doing pretty well there. I mean, Indians always need more hitters, though. And if I'm the Indians, there's one player I want, and that is Mitch Haniger. It's going to cost them the price. They can give up like one of their 18 shortstops in the top 20 prospects.
Yeah.
I think they can suffice that.
That'd be really nice, but here we are in the portion of the show where we have the separation between what we want to happen and what is realistically going to happen.
Realistically, they're going to make a trade for some lefty reliever that's about to be DFA'd.
Yeah, not ideal, and that's probably not going to help them track the White Sox down.
Nope. Indians are making a play for the wild card, and that's it.
Yeah. And then how about the White Sox themselves? They are really injured right now. So they've
I
got
was just gonna.
Jimenez out, obviously. Robert is out. Those are long-term injuries. The most recent one was Nick Madrigal going out for the season with a hamstring injury. And then even their secondary guys like Billy Hamilton, Adam Eaton, and some other players I'm sure I'm forgetting right now are also injured. So I feel like they just need some like bats in that lineup to fill it in because they really don't want to be putting out Brian Goodwin batting cleanup. That's not good for a contending team.
No. Just imagine this team if Eloy and Robert weren't hurt.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
it would be insane. But yeah, they need some more depth. But again, outfield is just kind of like starting pitching. There's just such a little supply of it that teams are really willing to give up. And luckily, the White Sox don't need starting pitching.
Yep,
That is
yep.
one of their
That's the one
best.
thing that's like keeping them afloat behind like Giolito and Cease and Rodon having their breakouts and Lance Lynn, of course. Like they've been really good this year. So if they can just keep it afloat, and then if they do end up getting Eloy and Robert back later in the season, that's going to be a huge boost for them. But
Yeah, I mean, if they wanted to make a huge splash, they could go almost for like a Starling Marte. Like you'll always find a spot for him in the outfield. I don't know if they'll be willing to pay that price.
that'd be a really nice fit for them, yeah. And then I saw you had mentioned Adam Frazier as a fit for them, and I really like that too as just like a guy they can plug in at the top of the lineup and get a bunch of hits for them and play second
Yeah, I was
base.
gonna say. Yeah, he's a hit machine there.
Like that, yeah. So we'll round out the Central with the two not as good teams. So the Tigers, they're clear sellers at this point. Jonathan Scope, he's been hitting really well recently, and other options are like Matt Boyd, who's injured right now, Michael Fulmer, who's been closing games and doing a nice job. I feel like he's the classic candidate to get traded for some team's bullpen.
Oh yeah. And how long have they been talking about trading Boyd and Fulmer?
Pretty much
Feels like
every
ever
year.
since their rookie year.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, at some point they just got to do it. And do both have an extra year of control?
Yeah, I think they both have 2022 under control. So.
Okay. Yeah, I mean Fulmer would be huge for a team that needs that back end of the bullpen.
Yeah, he's looked pretty good. He's like throwing 98.
Mhm. So if he can stay there and keep doing this well, he'll be a big trade chip. Other than that, I mean, the Tigers, there's a reason they're at the bottom of the division.
Yeah.
They just do not have many good players.
They have a lot of young players, and they just got to like keep churning through them and see if they can find any good ones. Like looks like Akil Badu's been really good this year, and he just popped out of nowhere. He was the Rule 5 pick. And then
I mean, has Eric Haas hit any more homers since he hit 8 in 20 games?
That's probably going to be the peak point of his career, unfortunately. But yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, miss him in a Cleveland uniform.
Yeah. And then the Royals, they're kind of in a weird situation because they've got some players that are on a little bit longer deals, like 2-year deals and stuff. They don't have a whole lot of rental pieces that they could trade. Also, I don't even know if they're necessarily think that they are sellers.
Another guy that everyone's been wanting for years, Whit Merrifield. Like, what teams would sell to them to pry him away? And it's like we mentioned the White Sox, not that they'll ever trade a division there, but man, Merrifield would look just as good as Frazier at the top of that lineup. But they'll probably never trade him. So really, you're gonna look at the minor deals probably for the Royals. Michael Taylor, he's an option for like a Boston who might need an outfielder, especially defensively. Danny Duffy is the question. I mean, he's a Royal for life. He said, "Bury me as a Royal."
Really?
Yeah, and but they could also try and pull a Chapman type deal of trade him, let him go to a contender for a couple months, and then re-sign him in the off season.
Wow. Yeah, he actually I didn't realize, but he makes 15.5 million this year, so I assume the Royals would probably pay some of that down to
Hmm.
improve the prospect haul, and he's been solid. I believe he's injured right now, but
Yeah.
he's been solid when he has pitched, and I think he'd be a nice like mid to back rotation guy for a lot of teams. And
Yeah. I mean, he had 7 games with a 2.35 FIP, 1.94 ERA.
yeah, it was really
I
good.
mean, yeah. Somehow he's only 4-3 in that time.
Well, Royals offense.
Yeah. And then they got a few more minor players like in the from the bullpen, Greg Holland, Scott Barlow. So, and then if they can, maybe they'll try and flip some of their 2-year commitments you mentioned. But
Yeah, I feel like the
they're another
Royals
team.
always think they're like competitive though, so who knows? They might just try to keep everyone they have because they think they can win this year, which they quite frankly probably can't.
They always feel like they win, like you said, and they always fall back, and then they're always loyal to their own players though, so they don't go on these fire sales.
Yeah, yeah. How far back are they right now, actually?
They are 10 games back of the division.
Okay, so they've got some work to do. So they're sort of similar with the Twins at this point.
Yeah, I mean they have no real reason not to sell outside of do they have enough guys that are going to garner enough attention.
Yeah, yeah.
Duffy is one that in this starting pitching market they could get something decent for. But again, will the Royals actually trade him or not?
All right. Let's switch over to the AL East and start with the Rays. So, big news of the week is the call up of Wander Franco, the number one prospect in baseball. It's finally happening, and he'll be joining the team on Tuesday for his first ever game. And I feel like the Rays have timed this up perfectly to coincide with them being on a 6 game losing streak. I think you had some more information about how that losing streak went down
Yeah.
so far.
First of all, they lost 4 to Seattle, which is just crazy. But Seattle's not doing bad. But 4 of their last 5 losses have all came in from via a walk off, and 3 were in the 10th inning. Which don't get me started on the 10th inning rule. I'm not a
Oh
fan.
no, yeah,
But
I completely agree with that.
but yeah, like you said, they called up Wander to help quell the storm. Fans are gonna love it. It's gonna energize that team. But and it's just gonna propel them. And it's actually one of the things I was thinking about when looking at what the Rays' needs were and everything. And first of all, does a team ever answer the phone when the Rays call? Like,
Uh,
would they stop by now?
yeah, I
I
feel
would
like
totally
every team
talk
has to
to
be like
them,
super suspicious, right?
right? When they come out and say, "I want your 35th best prospect," like,
Yeah,
do you have to sit there and ask yourself why?
yeah. You got to ask everyone in the organization, who is this guy? Why do they want him? What do we like about this guy?
Yeah, so almost I feel like the Rays are just going to take from their farm system. They started it with Franco, and they've got a couple more outfield options down there and some pitching. The one question I had was if with Glassnow, if he's going to be out long term. I know he's going to try and rehab for a little bit first,
Yeah,
but if he's out long
I
term,
don't think they can expect him back for a while. So, and even if he comes back, like who knows what he's going to be, or if he can just be a reliever or something at the end of the season.
right? So do they need to go after that top of the line starter, or and if they do, who is it?
Yeah, so let's talk about starters. Like, who is even available really
Yeah.
in that top of the line? Because we talked about the Nationals last week, and they won a bunch of games this week, and they're only 5 games back in the division. It doesn't seem like they would necessarily sell because they're pretty close, and they were farther out in 2019 when they ended up winning the World Series. So that rules out Scherzer, obviously, and then so many of the other starting pitching rental options are injured or not very good or already on a contending team. So outside
Yeah,
of
I
like
mean,
Kyle Gibson with the Rangers, like where are we? Who do we have left?
yeah, I mean, you mentioned Marquez last week for Colorado, but if you're thinking about the AL, I mean, we talked about Barrios. That would be a big pry if Tampa Bay could somehow get him, but I don't see Minnesota trading him. And the other one is John Means from Baltimore. But he seems to be outperforming himself this year. Now I know he's healthy right now, but he's probably the best pitcher available in the AL.
Yeah, and I mean, do the Orioles really want to trade him though? Because he's under control for how many more years? Probably through 2024, 2025. He was only a rookie in 2019.
Yeah,
so
he's arbitration eligible next season.
Okay, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to trade him, but at the same time, are the Orioles really going to contend in the next 2 years?
Yeah, I feel like we've been saying that for years about the Orioles. It seems like the rebuild has been just going on and on and on and on, and it's not really getting anywhere. So
No.
Why not trade who you have? But a couple of other options that the Rays could turn to are some of their minor leaguers. So Luis Patino, guy that they traded for in the Blake Snell trade from the Padres, he's one of their top prospects, and he seems to be doing pretty well in AAA. And then Shane Baz, that guy from the big famous Garrett Cole trade, the third piece after Meadows and Glasnow, he just got promoted to AAA, so could see him coming up just because they have that need with Glasnow being out for an undisclosed amount of time. And the Rays always seem to find a way with the pitching, and there's no reason to think that they won't figure it out some way this year too.
Yeah. Well, if Kevin Cash doesn't expect his starters to go more than 5 innings in a playoff game, I think they'll be okay making do with anyone that's around.
Yes. Yeah, and then Wander Franco, like that's going to be a huge boost. I feel like he is the most hyped prospect since Guerrero probably, and before that maybe Chris Bryant. I can't think of a more hyped up prospect debut.
I mean, he might even be higher than those two.
Could be, yeah.
I mean, does anyone expect him to do anything except come up and just start pounding the ball?
No.
I mean, he's like a 330 minor league hitter.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
That's one other thing about the Rays is one of their weaknesses is that they strike out a ton. They're second in the league in strikeout rate, and Wander is this elite hit tool guy that has always hit for average wherever he's been, and that's just going to be like a different look for their team, and I think it's going to help their lineup the whole way through and be really big for them.
Yeah, Wander in the minors has 95 walks to 75 strikeouts. So, yeah, he should help them a lot there.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing how that goes, and I feel bad for him because I feel like he can only disappoint, at least to start off. It's going to be difficult.
Trout debut.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so Orioles, we started talking about them there. I think they have to seriously consider trading Trey Mancini because he's a guy that's a little bit older and he's only got one more year before he becomes a free agent, so there's no reason to hang on to him, and he's a guy that can play multiple spots.
Mm-hmm. It kind of like the Carlos Carrasco trade this last offseason with the Indians. It's the emotional side that's hard to trade for him.
Oh yeah, especially
with the cancer
like him. Yeah.
And everything. Like, it's just hard to make that trade. You need to, but it's just going to be difficult for the fan base to accept.
Anyone else on the Orioles you want to mention?
I mean, Anthony Santander is another one. He's kind of regressed a little bit from last year, but he's still a solid outfielder with a lot more control. So teams will probably be lining up to get him, and he's going to be cheaper than like a Mancini type player is going to be. And teams that are very desperate. I mean, this guy might be a good stopgap for the Astros if they need it, is Michael Franco, just to fill in at third base while Bregman's hurt, but pretty sure Franco is one of the worst defensive third basemen in the league, so they might not want that there.
Yeah, probably not. But yeah, I never watched the Orioles. They're like the one team that like just always goes completely under the radar for me, but they're very bad still.
Yeah, I mean, you just watch that Jose Ramirez taking a page out of the hobby playbook, and you just watch that Orioles defense, and it's just terrible.
Yeah, you would think like a young team like that, they would like really focus on getting the fundamentals down, but they haven't figured it out yet.
No.
No. 5 more years of rebuilding. Let's go.
One day they'll make the playoffs again.
Yes. Blue Jays. This one's very simple. They have a need for pitching.
Yeah, if there's any team that needs it and that's a contender right now, it's them. They have the best lineup in the AL without it. And
Yeah.
that's without
what,
George Springer.
Yeah, right. So Springer started his rehab assignment over the weekend, so he should be back relatively soon, and that's going to be like an epic lineup to face, and they just have to figure out a way to hold opponents to like 5 runs a game, and they'll be fine.
I mean, just load up on the bullpen, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, they're a team that could definitely go with taking a shot at a big guy and sending that prospect depth out and getting somebody big. I had Scherzer on there before the Nationals went on this winning streak.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're like you said, pitching.
And Red Sox now. So they're also in need for pitching because they've also got a really good offense with J.D. Martinez, Devers, and Bogarts like having amazing seasons. So the lineup is looking real good. Starting pitching's been kind of suspect. It's been better than people were expecting, I think. But the one that really surprised me is that Eduardo Rodriguez has a 6.21 ERA after a really good 2019 season where he looked like he was going to be a really good pitcher, and he's kind of taken a really big step back. I don't know if that's COVID related or what, but he either needs to get it going or they need to go out and acquire a starting pitcher.
Yeah, Rodriguez has always been so tantalizing. He has the tools and ability. He came in as this hyped prospect, and he was like he always got a little bit better, and then he'd regress back, and then he did really put it all together in 2019. It seemed like, and then regressed a lot this year. When did the Red Sox not need starting pitching? Feels like that's their need every year.
Yeah, it's been a while. I guess they had slightly better pitching in 18 when they won the World Series, but even then, like the strength of the team was the offense, right?
Right.
Yeah. And speaking of 2018, the big chip that they could get back would be Chris Sale. If he can be regular Chris Sale, then they're going to be looking a lot better. And they've actually taken the lead in the East now, with the Rays kind of having a rough go of it in the recent days. So
yeah, Boston without Sale pitching. I mean, it's been since about July of 2019 that Sale hasn't pitched since. Has it been almost 2 years?
I think he pitched. He got injured sometime in 19. Came back at the end of the season, and then obviously missed all of 2020 with the Tommy John.
His last game was August 13th of 2019.
Okay, yeah.
So he's getting close to that 2-year mark of being out. So, but his elbow is just so fragile. The way with his motion.
He worked. He worked so hard when he was on the White Sox. He was always putting up like near 200 inning seasons, and obviously he throws really hard and from that funny 3/4 kind of slot, and he's an awesome pitcher when he's actually healthy. So
no, he's great, and you hope he comes back healthy and that he's able to return and help lead Boston there, because that's their biggest. That's the biggest trade they could make.
Yes. And then I saw your note here on Starling Marte as a fit, and I really like that idea too. Just seems like one more bat for this lineup to shore up the outfield a little bit.
Yeah, the Red Sox are so top heavy there with their star guys that they could just use somebody else to shore up clean up the outfield and help bump up that bottom half of the order.
Yep. My guy Hunter Renfro is starting to heat up though. 8 home runs.
Mhm. Yep. Oh man, I love Renfro.
um, and then we will finish this division up with the Yankees, who I don't know what to make of the Yankees. They're having a really strange season, and it just seems like their players are individually talented, but altogether they're not clicking together, and it's just not working like it
Which
has
is
in the years
so
past. Yeah.
crazy that when you think about baseball as a sport, and like you almost feel like if you're all individually talented, it should just work. Because
Yeah, and
it's
then
a team game, but it's not the same type of team game.
right. And this
Eh,
year it's it's especially not the way it's been in the years past where they've had a bunch of injuries and then guys will come up and just be plugged in and really succeed pretty much right away, and they've had a lot of depth. This year it feels a lot different, like they don't have that same depth. And they're not even as injured as they were the last 2 years.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean Stanton's been doing well too, which is a nice surprise for them. I remember in the first week of the season, everyone was ready to write him off.
Yeah, Stanton and Judge have not been the problem this year at all.
Mm-mm.
It's
Yeah, they're just such a question. I mean, they went on this big winning streak, and now I think they're in third place in the AL East.
I think so, yeah.
And but they're also prone to at any point they'll go and lose 5 in a row, and then they'll be in fourth place and have the wild card.
DJ
So
LeMahieu not looking so good in his first year of the new contract. He's only hitting 259. That's not the DJ I know.
that's the DJ that was hitting in Colorado in his last year
Oh yeah,
or two. That
yeah.
wasn't hitting very well.
And they've got some like
Uh,
dead spots in this lineup right now. They are getting Voit back, I believe, this week, so that's going to be a big boost. So they don't have to
mhm.
play Odor anymore, who's been atrocious. I don't understand why they brought him in because they owe him money for future years as well.
Yeah, I don't know at some point a player is what a player is.
Yeah,
And Odor, you know exactly what Odor is going to give you.
yeah, he gives you some power, very poor batting average, and very average to below average defense. So
I mean,
not.
it says something when you can hit 30 home runs and have a negative WAR.
I had completely forgotten that it happened, but yeah, that is the type of player he is, and there's
He
not
did
very
it
many of
twice.
them. Wow, because usually
Yeah.
you don't get enough playing time if you're that like detrimental to the team. But with the Rangers, I guess he was able to keep his job, probably because his contract, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, he exploded one year, and basically everyone's been hoping 2016 can happen again for the last 5 years.
Yes, yes. So
Yeah.
what do you actually see the Yankees doing this trade deadline?
I mean, like you said, Voit coming back and stopping to play Odor is a big step in the right direction. I don't know how they do it, but it'd be nice almost to get somebody other than Glaber at short.
Yeah, for defensive purposes, definitely, and Glaber himself has not really lived up to his expectations as a shortstop. Like he has no power all of a sudden after he hit 30 plus homers in whatever year that was, 2019.
Yeah.
He's just completely become a different player. He's hitting for average, but the power is like gone. He has
He has 3 homers.
3 home runs. That's ridiculous.
And he only hit 3 last year as well.
Wow. I don't know what happened to
Yeah.
him. And
I
then
mean, yeah,
Clint. Yeah, go ahead.
he hit 62 homers in his first 2 years.
Yeah, he's not the same guy right now. And then another guy who's not the same as he was last year is Clint Frazier, who's completely lost his starting job after having a really nice shortened season. But he's hitting 193 with 5 home runs. And when you're losing time to the ghost of Brett Gardner, like you've got issues with your team.
I was just going to bring him up too as another guy that somehow is getting playing time.
Yeah.
I mean, so you list out the options, but these guys are all, I don't want to say they should be getting playing time because they clearly don't deserve it, but it's going to be hard for the Yankees to find the roster space for very many upgrades. what's crazy to me is how good their pitching staff has been.
Yeah,
without
that's been a big
really
surprise.
being that good. I mean, you lose Kluber after his no-hitter. Talion is not what he was expected to ever, like what he was expected to be in his past. I mean, you don't have that. And
Yeah.
it's surprised it's another one of those kind of like Boston of they could use pitching, but they're surprisingly doing well.
Yeah. It's gonna be. I feel like they're not gonna do a whole lot, and they're just gonna kind of bank on some of those underperforming guys to get better, like Frazier and Glaber, but I don't know what really they can do unless they go out and make a huge move, which they don't typically do, I'd say.
No, I mean the Yankees are going to stand pat mostly. They might make some minor depth upgrades over like Odor, or Brett Gardner, but for the most part, I think they're going to stand pat, like you said. Hope these guys pick it up, and then when they miss the playoffs at the end of the season, they're going to have to take a hard look in the mirror and reevaluate this team next year.
Yeah, yeah. Yankees have never had a losing record under Brian Cashman, 23 years. Pretty crazy. I don't think
Wow.
they're gonna drop below 500, but I don't know if we can for sure say that this is a playoff team.
I don't think so. It's hard to, especially when you look at who's in the AL East.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, when Toronto gets that pitcher, they're going to pass the Yankees. Tampa Bay is not going to let up and lose. Boston's rolling right along. Who's going to fall and let the Yankees come up?
Yeah, that's gonna be a really tight division, and you almost feel like the wild card would have to come from that division. You think? At least one of them.
I mean, at least one is almost guaranteed to come from there. And when I originally was taking my notes, I wrote the Indians actually down as in the middle tier rather than buyers, and because I just don't see how they're going to stay up there. But it's one of those things. It's kind of like the NL West. They're just so stacked with teams. How do you not get 3 teams out of that division?
Yeah, yeah. And if it was 3 teams out of that division, then you'd be leaving out Cleveland, and you'd be leaving out one of the A's or the Astros, which is also like, wow, that'd be ridiculous if that happened.
Right.
Okay, so we started with the AL West. We're gonna finish up there with the last 3 teams here. So Angels, missing Mike Trout, like we talked about, they're in that like weird middle ground also where they can't. I don't know if they can justify like going all in for it, but they don't seem like a team that likes to sell.
Do they ever?
No.
I mean, Angels could be 10 games under 500 right now, and they'd be saying they're buying at the trade deadline. I mean, honestly, this is probably one of their better seasons, considering they're actually 500.
That's true.
But still not what they want to be. I mean, they're like another team. Also, I said the same thing as Boston. Do they ever not need starting pitching?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
the Indians and the Angels need to get together. The Indians can grow pitching like no one else. Like, if they could just combine, take some of the Angels hitters away, we'll give them some of our, before being injured, starting pitching pipeline, and they can work together there.
Yeah, it's a perfect match. Like Angels this year, they're 5th in the league with a 109 WRC plus. So the offense is not the problem, even without Mike Trout being there for a big chunk of the season so far. With like Ohtani and Walsh and other guys that they have, their offense is doing well, and they've actually been winning a bunch of games recently with their pitching. If they end up going that sell route, though, they actually are one of the few teams that have a lot of kind of rental or 1 year left kind of guys that they could trade, like a Dylan Bundy, who's having a really bad season, but he seems like that perfect kind of change of scenery, where a team sees like one thing he's doing wrong, and they say, hey, this guy can make this little tweak here and be really good, like when the Cubs
Tampa
trade.
Bay.
Yeah. Tampa Bay, there you go. Yeah, like the Cubs did with Cole Hamels back in 2018. He was having a terrible season with Texas. Then he comes over and he goes on like an amazing run with the Cubs at the end of the season. Same thing with Alex Cobb. Quintana's off the IL today. Andrew Heaney. These are all like solid pitchers. They're not amazing, but so many teams are looking for just guys that can give them innings and be not terrible, basically.
Exactly, and that's what the Angels have right there. Is they don't have that top of the line guy for sale, but they have solid middle back of the order guys who will just eat the innings.
Right. Yeah, they're in a really tough spot though, because whenever you have Mike Trout, you don't want to sell, but do you sell?
How long till Trout comes back? I forget his timeline.
I think they're saying like around the All-Star break, maybe a little bit after the All-Star break.
I mean, I think the question the Angels have to ask here is, can they stay afloat until Trout gets back?
Yeah.
Like, can they be in the competition in mid-July? And if the answer is yes, then maybe they don't have to make a ton of trades. Or I don't even know if they can make a ton of trades because it's the Angels and they have no prospect depth.
Yeah.
But if they can't stay afloat, then you got to sell. I mean, at some point, one day we will see Mike Trout again in the playoffs.
I hope it's soon and not like when he's super old or something.
Yeah. Mike Trout, Ohtani playoff, that would be something great to see.
That'd be fantastic, yeah.
Another team that's basically in the same boat as the Angels is the Mariners.
Yes.
I think they have the same record. Seattle's actually won 2 more since I last looked. So
yeah, they're sweeping the Rays, man. They're legit.
Yeah.
I feel like they're slightly different from the Angels because they definitely did not have the expectations to be playing this well. They're actually overperforming, and I don't know. They got like a lot of young players. Maybe they just ride it out and say like, hey, we believe in you young fellows here, and let's just see what we can do. And then next year they'll really be in the heart of their contention window or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's the tough question of, I mean, really, is anyone going to catch Houston and Oakland in there? I have a really hard time believing it.
Yeah.
So you're with the 4 teams in the AL East that are competing, you're probably not going to get another wild card spot. So do you stay the same, or do you try and get something for one of your expiring veterans that aren't going to be around when you're competing in the next year or two, like a Kyle Seager? But you know where he'd look good at? Milwaukee.
Ooh, yeah, that's a great fit actually. With them losing Shaw, they need some more offense, and he's pretty reliable over at third base. Like, it seems like a really nice fit, and
yeah. So that's one option. I mean, Haniger, do you almost have to sell high given I think he only has 1 year left after this?
Yeah, he has 22.
And you have so many outfield prospects.
Right, yeah. Like Jake Fraley playing randomly really well. They've got, of course, Kelenic going to come back up and be great at some point. Kyle Lewis and Taylor Trammell, like, they've got plenty of other options. They really don't need to keep, 28, 29-year-old Haniger around any longer.
Yeah, exactly. So trade him while he's high, his value's high again, and get that more depth from what you need.
Yes, I agree with that.
I mean, you could trade. It's kind of like what the Indians did. It's addition by subtraction, and you're chalking the season up as a win, and you're letting all the guys know, but you are selling a few pieces to improve your team for next year.
Yes, and one other guy that they have, I didn't know about the structure of his contract, which is very interesting. So basically, Yusei Kikuchi has he's been with the Indians now for 3 years, but the Mariners, or whatever team he's on, I guess, has a club option on him for 4 additional years for $66 million if it gets exercised. If not, it turns to a player option for 2022 only at $13 million. So if you had told me that this option had any chance of getting actually exercised before the season, I would have said, you're absolutely crazy. This guy has an ERA over 5 in his first 2 years. He really is not very good. And then this year, he kind of completely changed the story on him, and he's been a mid three ERA guy. He's a left-handed pitcher, which is could be a kind of a rare commodity for teams looking for starters, and who knows? Maybe that gets picked up, and even if it doesn't, 13 million for a player option is really not outrageous. So I could see him getting moved, and he's 30, so it's not like he really needs to be part of the core if the Mariners don't want him around.
Yeah, I mean, worst case, he's picks up that player option, and then they got a trade chip next year.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Okay, and then that final team in the AL West of the Rangers.
Yep.
Another team that has no shot.
Yeah, and they at least probably recognize that they have no shot, and they will fully put themselves in the sell path there. Mm-hmm. So Kyle Gibson, like we've talked about him a few times, he's one of the top, if not the top 1 year starting pitcher available right now. He's having a really good season, kind of out of nowhere because he's never been this good before. But that's the perfect time to sell your guy. And then outside of that, they've got. Go ahead.
Doesn't Gibson have another year left?
Does he? Oh, he may.
I think so.
Actually, you may be right about that. Yeah, but it's relatively inexpensive.
I think it's like $7 million if I remember correctly.
Okay, yeah. So no team's really going to complain about having Kyle Gibson for another year.
No, but it'd be a very Rangers thing to not trade him.
We're going to win. We're going to win next year.
They did that with Lance Lynn and Mike Minor in the last recent history.
True. Yeah, and then another guy is Jordan Lyles, who's not having a good season, but who knows? Like, he's another depth starter. And then Kennedy, who's having a really good season as their closer, also sort of out of nowhere, but he can definitely bring back some level prospect. Maybe not a great one, but something.
Yeah, they'll get something for him for costing nothing, and he's got 12 saves already, and he just came back off the IL. Yeah, and then there's their big question, which I feel like is another player who's a question every single season, is Joey Gallo. And are they finally going to trade him? Does any team want him?
Yeah, he's doing regular Joey Gallo stuff, right? He's got the power. He actually has 6 stolen bases, which is pretty cool. And then he's a guy that can play all over the field, so he's really athletic and can play all the outfield spots, first base, and that's a guy that could fit on a lot of teams, I feel like, and I think they should trade him.
I think so too. I feel like there's not going to be the demand, or no one's going to meet their requirements at the trade deadline. But I think by the off season at the latest they have to trade him.
Because he's got 1 more year as well, correct?
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. Alrighty.
Yeah, he's one of those though.
That was a lot of teams that we got through there.
Yeah.
Do you have any closing thoughts on the AL here?
I don't think so. I mean, AL seems to be pretty much set with about 8 teams that are fully fledged in that bye category, with one of those teams being the Indians, who obviously won't do anything. Now, hopefully, me saying this they will get back to them, and then they will say, "Well, we're going to prove him wrong," and then they'll go out and trade for like an Andrew Miller type player again.
Yeah. So, quick question: so, is there actually a sell path for the Indians? Let's just say they have a really bad 3 weeks here.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like?
One. If you get rid of Cesar.
Okay. Yeah.
He's got a cheap player option or club option next year with basically no buyout, so he's a big one. You got Eddie Rosario for whatever he can return.
Yeah.
If you really wanted to make a splash, you'd say we're going to stick 4 shortstops in our infield and trade Jose Ramirez.
Ooh, that would be the big shock of the year for sure.
Yeah. The Indians don't have much, and I mean, all their starting pitching is 25 or under, so you're not trading any of those guys. Right. Theoretically, Brian Shaw signed a 1-year deal, so you could trade him if he's still pitching at all in 3 weeks. But, I mean, I don't know. The Indians are an interesting team, and I think they're just going to ride it out, doing
Yeah.
better than feeding off the Twins' faults here. I think they're going to just ride it and see if they can somehow scrape into that second wild card and hope that by the time the playoffs come around, their pitching will be healthy.
Yeah, because once you get to the postseason, like lots of teams can win it in a lot of different ways, and really getting there is sometimes a lot more challenging than like flukily winning a playoff series or whatever. But
Yep.
I think a lot of teams are gonna give it their shot, even maybe the Angels and the Mariners. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Hopefully we get an exciting trade deadline with some big time players on the move, and we can get to see and analyze what those returns are.
Yes.
And hope it's a good one.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Matthew, for joining us today. You did a great job filling in. Not quite in Mason's style, but your own style, which is nice to have a different opinion here.
Yeah,
cool.
I'm glad to be on. Happy to join anytime.
Yeah, and if you enjoyed this podcast, we'd like if you could take some time to leave us a review and a rating on whatever platform you may be listening to it on. That would be very much appreciated. You can now listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, some other apps, and YouTube. And thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you next week.